Come in a dark mode. Dark mode. In a dark mode.
Yeah, you.
I can last night them know we not right. Come on, why them while we know the guns up and we get that bad time. When we love the feeling, when we kill them, we can do this all night. Here with the gun now, we are reasonable to get them free fight. Screwing on and off, we bust them face and gun, we and gun them up. We have rifle M16 and gun, face one gun. Bust face, and it's with face and gun, waste my gun. Properly kill them.
Come in a dark mode. When we tell them, send me the inner dark mode. Dark mode, dark mode.
And them visit and them get shot in us. Blacks who got in us. Coulda super, coulda max in us. Who want the X in us. When kind device touch him, shot the burn in the in us. Send a bitch and make shit. Bad shit. All over the people sitting in any slum. Coming from the slum, stupid guns. Slow to bust my gun. He last on the ground. I jump, tumble down, bust them head. Rough on the way now.
They in a dark mode. Dark mode. When we tell them, come in the inner dark mode. Dark mode. When we tell them I'm in dark mode.
Yeah.
When we tell some boy come in the inner dark mode. Dark mode. Dark mode. Bro, me got talk for the palm me mind, them no like it. Come here ready if you could kill some psychics. You never do some boy, them a go like so them a bad man. When me get to find out that them man. Them a talk about how me a idiot. Me have to play for we catch wise. But them know say me smarter than them. Come in the dark mode. Dark mode. Dark mode. Come in the dark mode. Dark mode. I love the highlights, you know. Dark mode.
They killed, give me Isaiah 14 and 21. They did the same thing to my people. So that you said that they put millions of my Should a murderer go to jail for murdering? Absolutely. Should a thief go to jail when he steals? Absolutely. Should a robber pay back the money he robbed? Absolutely. So why shouldn't the white man pay for what he did? That's right. That's right. One day you'll see just how it feels. Payback is a door. Payback is a door.
I'm in a hell of a hole, was never expected to grow. Just obstacle set in the road, that a result of me selling my soul. The story I'm telling is cold, but yet it's what everyone knows. The white man's the devil is known. America was never our home. Only a place of captivity, safe facility, hating, disfigure me. They claim that I'm lazy, be killing me. Maybe this slavery draining my energy. 400 years and counting. The trail of my tears is countless. The fact that I'm here is astounding, but I can't wait till this shit is surrounded. Ready to tangle my king and the angel, be ready to rap. Crack in the sky, nuclear missiles will make it official. I'm capturing every crack and surviving. Put them all in chains where they need to be. Slavery for me. And let the whole world see that with them in the cages, safer in the streets. Put the dog on a leash. Get resolved for the beast. 144, get the ruler show, we could all be at peace. As soon as the trumpets are sound, your kingdom we busting it down. The only way justice is found, the time for your judgment is now. You'll see just how it feels. Payback is a door. Payback is a door. Look, ain't no remorse in my blood slim. It won't be no compromise. Now it's time to feed the worms. Watch his body turn to flies. I clutch iron while you trust the lies. The next Glock I buy gon' be Gen 5. I get it customized. and sending shots off like farewell. Praying payback, come back around like a carousel. Still remember YAHANNA's words ringing in my head like bells. Said you in his body, you fit the Lord, fuck the cartel. Triangle choke, apply pressure to the game like I did Vondale. Payback's a bitch in a dress, she a bombshell. Revenge is served cold, I just hope they make an oxtail. Glock fresh out the box, I swear it got that new car smell. Made myself a target in a world of mad shooters. Devils design fire for our babies to pass through it. And the day of our king's reign, I'll be overzealous. They bought my jealous, I bought brand new parabellums.
Someday you'll see just how it feels. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog.
Okay, start again. Clap it up. Welcome to another episode of the Conflict Zone. At first song that you just hear me play in a dark mode. Some artists where don't even get boss yet, you know. But you know, when name Akile, DJ Akile and his team, well, DJ Akile. But I say Akile and his team brain crew, you know. But I think I still brain crew them names still, but Steenbrain there's somewhere in the name there. I like the name still. Steenbrain crew. So, you know, that young man them when a stage performer, I come across a couple of videos and we give a bus on the show, you know. Give him a play, an airplay, and we give more airplay too. That is how our artists are discovered. You know, just like how you think Beanie Man and Bounty and them man they get bus. You see me? DJ then yard back until reaching our studio. Alright. Alright, this week now we're looking at destruction of black towns and businesses. Now we in the West Indies here, known as the Benjamites. We were one with Judah in Jerusalem, you know. And when we went to Africa, and even though we had our province, we were always together. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, part of Levi. We were always together. Coming into slavery now, the slave master, the separation, put we in the Caribbean and put them in the States for again crops, various kind of crops and things. And then, you know, in the last days, you know, we'll find that we have similar problems with the same oppressor. We were taught to not really like each other by the oppressor. So we have Jamaicans who travel abroad there and believe that, you know, we are separate people. But I can tell you this, coming out of slavery, the ex-slaves coming out of slavery were given nothing to survive on. So what? we make good with what we had. The marketplace was our place of business until we built shops and stores and schools and banks, and of course, it's churches. Yep, we were Christians then. All this, however, was nothing in the eyes of our person. So they burnt and destroyed over 100 black townships throughout America. Now, were thriving black towns and cities. I think they say today you have probably approximately at 30 black towns within, within the US. They killed, they extinguished over 100 of them. But one thing was for sure was that we were Christians. So you know who else were Christians? The very same people who were destroying our towns. They were also Christians too. Yep, the oppressors were Christians. So you tell me now, how does that work? Which is why since 1969 we have separated ourselves and coming into ourselves truly, realizing that we are the blacks, realizing that we blacks, Hispanics, and Native are the true Israelite of the scriptures of the Bible. We have separated ourselves from the system, how the system operates. We don't say we are Christians. We say we are Hebrew Israelites. And there's a big reason for that. The Christians were also the oppressor. And because our people could not make that separation, could make the distinction between the oppressor and you, because you are both Christians, guess who gets screwed? Never has it ever been that they get screwed, we get screwed. Always. So we're going to look at two black towns today that was destroyed. Each week we're on the little segment on that. I don't know if we can go to the entire 100 black township that was destroyed by the oppressor. And today we want to look at Tulsa, the famous Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, and one that many of us have never heard of, called Harris Neck in Georgia. Came across that one just the other day. Harris Neck is an interesting little town, self-sustaining town too. Until the oppressor realized it was too self-sustaining, so they came and destroyed it. First one we're going to look at though is Black Wall Street, Tulsa. Yeah, it was the Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, interesting. This website comes from the Library of Congress. Guides.loc.gov. And the research paper is the Library of Congress. So this is this is what the American government records. This is not a hearsay. This is in their Congress, their Library of Congress. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, destroyed on June 1st, 1921. All right, let us do some reading. On May 31st and June 1st, 1921, which was before World War II, mobs of white residents attacked black residents' homes and businesses, as well as cultural and public institutions in the Greenwood district of Tulsa. So this come up on our radar because there was businesses there, and you know the conflict zone. We look at the business side of our people. You know, we getting into business and doing through these researches and things. You realize that our people was making good strides in business. We were sidelined by banks, and we were destroyed by mobs. Mobs like Ku Klux Klan, they were the main one. I know one interesting thing I learned about the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was mainly, I think it started by the Irish. There was a lot of Irish in the Ku Klux Klan. You know, when the Irish came to America, where the Irish lived, the Irish came to America, they were so poor, they lived among the blacks. And we blacks did not harm them or anything. We helped them, we gave them things. They lived in our communities, they were our neighbors, we were nice to them, we were good to them. Until they managed to surpass us, man, and they just turned on us. Ku Klux Klan. Alright, so mobs of white residents attack black residents, homes and businesses, as well as cultural and public institutions. In the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, an oil boom city. So Tulsa was an oil city. So money was floating. Greenwood was also known as Black Wall Street, one of the wealthiest black communities in the United States. So if we were allowed to settle on our lease, imagine what we would have produced today. One of the wealthiest black communities in the United States. As a result of this attack, 35 blocks were systematically looted and burned, destroying 190 businesses and leaving 10,000 people homeless. Think about it. 190 black businesses wiped out within over a 2-day period. And over 10,000 blacks became homeless within 2 days. The property loss, estimated by the Tulsa Real Estate Exchange, was the equivalent of 31 million in 2017. Likely an underestimation. This is what the Library of Congress is recording. This is likely an underestimation. So in other words, they would underestimate the damage so as to pay out as least as possible. In order to orient yourself to the area of destruction and reconstruction, you may want to examine the Sunburn Fire. Alright, so it's this map they're referring to, Sunburn Fire Insurance map from before and after 1921. Some of these maps are available digitally through the Library of Congress, but many are also available at local public libraries, where there are good sources of genealogical and business history information. This digital map, available from May 1911, includes the Greenwood district, which was segregated at the railroad tracks. Where's the railroad tracks? Oh, right there. So this was in the time when segregation was high in America. You know, black whites don't want to mix with blacks. So we had our own towns, our own communities. So Greenwood now, the railway was the line of segregation. So you live on this side of the railway, the black town, you stay there. On the other side, you stay there. Hmm, interesting. Very, very interesting. Why is it interesting? Right. One thing I learned about the segregation period, integration didn't come about because so much because we fought for it. Yes, there were blacks who were pushing for integration, but that's not why it came about. Well, my understanding, what by listening to some of the dialogue from some ex-military men and so the talk shows and things, they said that these integration came about as a result of when America trying now after World War II, trying to be the international voice for democracy and peace and so on and so forth. And the other countries then would be like, you can't compete with you. Don't even let black people go in the same restaurant. You don't even drink out of the same fountain as black people. What are you going to tell us about democracy? So they have to now look back at themselves and say, no, we have to integrate. So this is why now it's like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King didn't march into Baltimore from the south for integration purpose. Jobs. That was what Martin Luther King was doing. Jobs, not integration. But because they came up with a plan for integration, they have to do things like this. So that was what led to the destruction of our towns, the black towns, and to um, labeling Martin Luther King as like a voice for integration. That wasn't so. The government wanted integration because by integrating with the blacks, they could now become the international police that they are today. And of course, it was to our detriment because those integration caused us to lose over 100 black towns and hundreds of businesses that were black owned, black sustained, and were that's when and black people were pulling on themselves up by the bootstraps, as they love to say. No, black people then there was no welfare. Black people never did go around and try to get on welfare because there was none for sure. And even if there was at that time, few if any blacks would get on it. So what? Make things with our hands, take it to the marketplace, open our restaurants and so on. We were making strides, we were making money until they come in with this, Jim Crow and integration and these all kind of things and trick the Christians among us. And because they did that, we are where we are today. All right, let's read some more about Oklahoma. Some of these maps, okay, this digital map available from May 1911 includes the Greenwood district, which was segregated at the railroad tracks. The Library of Congress has a digitized collection of sunburn fire insurance map from Tulsa, Oklahoma from 1915 to 1929 that shows this destruction. No insurance claims were honored from African Americans in the Greenwood district. And according to the Red Cross reporting by July 1921, there were lawsuits filed by African Americans with claims over 4 million, which would be worth nearly 60 million today. The most significant humanitarian relief to the disaster came from the Red Cross, which was designated the official relief agency by Mayor T.D. Evans. Upon finding out about the situation, the Director of Relief from the St. Louis office, Maurice Willows, contacted the organization's Washington, D.C. headquarters to request an expansion of the mission of the organization from responding to natural disaster to aiding the survivors of this man-made disaster, which left 10,000 people homeless, African Americans in camps. 10,000 homeless African Americans. Like we have the Gaza camps, like that. The Red Cross provided critical medical aid by setting up hospitals to care for individuals with a variety of needs, from injuries to dysentery, and by vaccinating victims to prevent the further outbreak of infectious disease. There were many individuals and groups who volunteered to assist the displaced, particularly women, including the Chicago Company of Marvin Garvey Black Cross Nurses. So that is so Marvin Garvey. We know Garvey was a Jamaican. So there was Jamaicans there helping. Marvin Garvey's Black Cross Nurses. Funds were collected across the country. So this is another thing. These black towns, all of them, Jamaicans, because when Jamaicans have been migrating from long time before World War One. Where do you think Jamaicans were going? We're not going to the United States. I think we were going in white communities. No, we were going in these black towns. So a lot of Jamaicans and Asians, because we know that Haitians were sponsors of, or we should say, inspirators of a lot of these independent black villages. So a lot of Asians and West Indians were among them, among the Judites. So it's not, well, then again, in Jerusalem, when they say Jews or Judah, well, Jews, You're actually talking about Judah, Benjamin, and the Levites. They were the Jews. So don't get the impression that these black towns were, just Judites and, blacks, the West Indian or the Asians, and trying to hitch a ride or anything like that. Now, we were not segregated in Jerusalem. We weren't segregated coming out of Jerusalem and the west coast of Africa. We weren't segregated then. I mean, talking about the blacks. Talking about Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So that is why you have the Marvin Garvey Black Cross nurses pitching in to help. I think this was one of Garvey's son. Funds that this order. This is 19 something. Probably not. Garvey would have been a young man then. Well, this is in the 20s. Garvey was around then. Funds were collected across the country to aid those who had become unemployed and homeless. To the now, we don't set up a GoFundMe. With the Omaha Monitor reporting on a collection, it started, noting the contribution of waiters from the Blackstone Hotel. So we had hotels too. The Red Cross provided temporary tent housing with sides and floors of lumber. And Mr. Willows, an advocate for rebuilding Greenwood, developed a more permanent housing plan and secured funding. The Red Cross promoted the need for a proper sanitary sewage system to be in place before reconstruction. Rebuilding the district was determined to be the responsibility of the city, and the Red Cross refused to be part of the progress, as the relief and reconstruction effort became politicized. Yeah, because I'm sure they want to rebuild now, but they want to mix whites in the amongst the blacks. The mission of the organization was to provide relief by ensuring that all homeless families were provided with shelter, laundry, and cooking facilities. Families were reunited. Destitute women and children were cared for, and the able-bodied were placed on a self-supporting basis. This tragedy resulted in massive job loss in the community. The Red Cross documented the violence in reports which are available through the Tulsa Historical Society and Museum. The association surveyed 1,765 families. So what families was displayed? Wow. And found that 1,115 homes were burnt and 314 homes were looted but not burnt. Victims were relocated to a variety of areas and from Chicago to Houston, with approximately 300, mostly women and children, leaving to stay with relatives. In the preface of the 1921 report, Mr. Willows wrote, "The story of the tragedy enacted on the night of May 31st, 1921, and the morning of June 1st, 1921, so it was one whole night has been told and retold with all sorts of variations in the press of the country. Whatever people chose to call it, a race riot, massacre, Negro uprising, could not be a Negro uprising. It was Negroes who live in the community, in the town, or whatnot. The word has not yet been coined which can correctly describe the affair. This report attempts to picture the situation as representatives of the Red Cross found it and to record the activities of the organization to bring in order out of chaos and administering relief to the innocent. Or the Library of Congress, them looking at the government side, they don't really hold the story of as it would have been told by the people. So they were telling me about the aid that would have been run and all that. And guess what? There's many books. Many books were written about that race riot, which alright, so I said this is one. The 1921 Tulsa riot, race riot, was the country's bloodiest civil disturbance of the century, leaving perhaps 150 dead, 30 city blocks burned to the ground, and more than 1,000 families homeless. The riot, how could it be a riot? Who would the blacks be rioting again? They were attacked. The race massacre would be more like it. Just invaded people them overnight. That's not a riot. Can't call it a riot. This is akin to Columbus discovering the Caribbean. Or you can call it a riot. Who would they be rioting against to destroy the entire town? You're not rioting against anybody. When people come across, they had their plans. Like I said, this was to integrate all the plan to integrate all these black communities within the white society. And without talking to them, the plan was to destroy these black communities. You know, sad to say, you know, modern day Gaza is experiencing something similar. This is the signature move by the oppressor. This is how they do things. But the difference is Gaza have people to speak up for them. We never at this time we never had nobody to speak up for us. So we were abused and bamboozled and you name it. Library of Congress. There are other websites. I tell you about Tulsa, National Museum of African American History and Culture. Let us touch on their views. Remember in Tulsa? Oh, this one, this National Museum one, is telling you about Tulsa before the massacre. Man, look at the town. Let's see if we can enlarge this. So we get a better look at this township. This was an all-black town. I mean, look at it, man. 3-story building. Buzzing town. Where blacks own the businesses. I mean, Jamaica is a major town about who you say owning business in China. They are pushed out by the Chinese. Tulsa, before the massacre, all blacks. All those cars you see on the road and things, think about that. Owned by blacks, driven by blacks, in a black town. This was the richest black town that was around in its time. What did they do? They burned it to the ground. All right. In late May 1921, the thriving African American community of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, suffered one of the deadliest racial massacres in U.S. history. It was one in a series of actions of racist violence that convulsed the United States in towns and cities, beginning with the period of Reconstruction in the late 19th century. In Tulsa, as in all of these massacres, white mobs destroyed black communities, properties, and lives. A century after the massacre, the people of Tulsa and the nation continued to struggle to reckon with its multiple legacies. Communities of freedom. For much of American history, land was a potent symbol of freedom and a foundation for the practice of self-determination. The Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, has a history that is rooted in the history of black settlements and towns in 19th century Oklahoma and a wider geography of communities of freedom that stretch far and wide across the continent for hundreds of years. So, I mean, they call it Reconstruction, but what was Reconstruction? Yeah, getting us to be integrated with them. Black Oklahoma. In 1830, the first African American came to the Oklahoma Territory with Native Americans along the Trail of Tears. Some were enslaved and some were free. After emancipation, they settled throughout the territory and founded several all-black towns. Okay. Here is even a 3-minute video.
Between the 1870s and the beginning of World War I, black pioneers settled more than 100 all-black towns in the West, each with the goal of economic independence. Among the most well-known was a black district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, known by its residents as Greenwood.
If we were to go back in time to 1920 and walk up and down Greenwood Avenue, one thing that would probably...
Right, look at this. This is an all-black town. Those vehicles, everything there owned and driven by blacks, buildings there in the town, black businesses. Remember, it was over 190 black businesses that were lost.
We strike us as the absolute variety of businesses. The numbers are astonishing. 30 restaurants, 45 groceries and meat markets. There were dry goods stores, milliners, photography studio, dental offices, Greenwood is no longer called Greenwood. It's now known as Black Wall Street.
This whole idea of self-containment really existed there. The dollar would stay in that community sometimes over 3-5 years before it ever went outside of the community.
In 1919, Black soldiers returned from World War I with high expectations for racial progress at home. But in one city after another, white mobs erupted in violence, targeting Black veterans, citizens, and businesses. Hundreds died. On Tulsa's Black Wall Street, Africa.
So imagine you leave, go to war to fight so-called enemies for what you call is liberty or whatever it was that America was fighting for. Then when the war is over and you go back home, you know fighting to stay alive. You know, the very men who you went to fight for turn against you.
African Americans, including armed veterans, watched nervously and prepared for what might come.
Countering this white militancy is very much an African American spirit of we're going to defend ourselves. If the mob comes, we're not going to run. We've got our guns and we're going to protect ourselves. And that was especially important and valuable and potent in Greenwood.
On May 30th, 1921, the mob came to Greenwood.
This white woman is in an elevator and this Black teenager allegedly whistles at her or talks to her. He is taken to jail. A mob gathers of whites and Blacks, and Blacks in Tulsa are armed. They take their Second Amendment rights seriously and they come with guns. And this is a threat. Someone fires into the crowd and the riot is born. This was not about the whistling boy in the elevator. This was about Blacks becoming too economically powerful and showing that wealth in a way that anyone would by creating buildings and constructing churches and having property.
There was a whistle that blew, and then the mass invasion and the destruction of Greenwood began.
When the smoke cleared in the early morning of June 1st, 1921, Black Wall Street lay in ruins.
This is by far the largest single incident of racial violence in all of American history.
What can I say? What can I say? You see, this was not because, in other words, we were making too much strides in their eyes. You know, this is not how they saw us. They saw us as being slaves and scraping the bottom of the barrel and the worst of things. And just like today, prisoners and mobsters and gunmen. Nah. Black Wall Street, we were businessmen and we owned property and we had families. And on top of that, remember this, they were Christians. So was most of them in the government. So where was the white Christians? Since there are some good white men, where was the white Christians to stand up for even the Black Christians that was there? This was a riot against Black progress. All right, the other one now is Harris Neck. Let me get back this. and that was called Iris Neck. This one was not somewhere so much like Tulsa, but it was also a black town which was independent. So it was as if it was as if you blacks making too much progress. You gotta pay for that. That's what it was like. Our snake now is let me see if I can find this one. This little village now or town called Arisneck was a stunningly beautiful 2,687 acres of meadows, woodlands, freshwater ponds, and marsh. Arisneck, a national wildlife refuge since 1962, was once home to a prosperous and self-reliant community of 75 African American families. From the end of the Civil War until 1942, the people of Arisneck, located along the coast in the northeast corner of McIntosh County, Georgia, lived harmoniously with each other and their natural environment. Speaking about their lives before 1942, many of the remaining elders who still live in Georgia say it was a hard life, but it was a good life. The people lived off the land, creeks, rivers, and ocean, and they took their crops, wild game, and seafood to market in Savannah and Darien in small sailboats. They lived with nature, not apart from it, in a manner that would decades later come to be known as environmentally friendly and sustainable. They relied on the outside world for very little and preserved much of their African ways. So they call it African ways. It was the Israelite ways. A culture that came to be known as Gula or Gula Geechee, a hard-working and resourceful people. They had their own seafood processing plants, schoolhouse, general store, and firehouse. So it was indeed a town. They had a fire station there. They have the grocery store. They have the school, and they have the processing plant. Then in the summer of 1942, everything changed. Not long after America entered World War II, the U.S. Army began looking for land along the Georgia coast on which to build an army airfield. They say every time they want to build something, black land, black towns is always the priority. Oh, we need to build some new houses. Hmm, there's a black town over there. We can put it right there. We need to build an airfield. Oh, right there, Harris Neck. That's a little black town. Why not move it and put it there? If you should hear some of these discussion among these officers before these things, that will be surprised. In McIntosh County, the army was led to Harris Neck by a few local power brokers. See, Hello? The federal government took Harris Neck via eminent domain and gave the community just a few weeks to move. On July 27, 1942, everyone was evicted, some forcefully. The army then burned and bulldozed everything in the community and began construction of its airfield. So there was no relocation plan to say, okay, we're moving a town. We're going to put it there. We're going to rebuild everything and give it back to them. Or we're going to pay them for it. That's why I see this thing about forget about slavery. You don't want to hear nobody come about forget about slavery. You can't forget about nothing with these men, people. You today you are being told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's what the white man love to say. But here we are, 1942, these people are doing just that. You move them out, bulldoze what they had, as in the case of Tulsa, you burn what they had, and you did not compensate them for what was lost. Everything in the community had, and that some forcefully, the army then burned and bulldozed everything in the community and began construction of its airfield. This implementation of eminent domain was unjust and illegal since eminent domain takings require by U.S. Supreme Court decision, Olson versus U.S. 1934. So, I mean, just like today, Trump deporting a lot of a lot of our brothers, our Hispanic brothers, and Caribbean brothers, deporting them illegally. So, I mean, you have a game, you playing a game with somebody, the rule is set, and you are playing by the rule which is set. And in the middle of the game, somebody changed the rule. Generally, it's the person that does that, yeah. But the rules are changed in the middle of the game. That can't work. Mm. Eminent domain. That the owner of condemned property should be left in as good a position af- after the taking as she was before the taking. Exactly. They should be left after you take the property. You should leave them in the same position that they were in before you take the land. That's how I know it goes legally. The people of Arisneck were all left homeless, and every person's livelihood was destroyed in a single day. Yeah. That's how you know that Babylon's destruction is going to come in one single day. The same thing they do with it. Every township that they destroy for they do within one day, it's no more. Also, the compensation paid to the black families was 40% less than the white landowners. So they were white people there too. Who was compensated? They give some blacks something which they could live after. They could live off after they give them. So there was no just compensation. Look at that. This taking was the first in, I suppose when they say white landowners, I suppose it's not white landowners who was in Arisnet. Talking about white landowners generally, wherever they take white land, because they did take white lands too, but the whites were compensated for their lands. This taking was the first in a long series of injustice that the people of Arisnet have endured up to the present day. Damn. Yeah, because here's a map of Arisnet. Why it was called a neck is because it's a like a peninsula. So they took it, built an airfield there. After the war over, they still didn't give them back the land. And this is about 40 years. They will not given to anybody. So Harris Neck was one which was lost as well. The Darien News, July 27, 1942, remember, the day of the taking of Harris Neck land. When will Macintosh schools open? You know, the Pentagon is sitting on is also no mercy. Not to mention how many of these black towns became lakes. One of them is Lake Lanier, different lake. White people want a lake. Oh, that black town can be moved, turn it into a lake. The Pentagon, where the Pentagon was built, a black town was there too. You can't tell me the black town was so many places that you couldn't go into the bush and build these things without destroying black towns. No, because you had a integration or what you call reconstruction period. When reconstruction really was you getting us to integrate with the whites forcefully so you can look good. And when I go to the people of the world, they will not say, oh, but you can talk to us. The blacks in your community country don't even allow to drink out of the same fountain that you drink out of. You can't come tell us nothing about no democracy. So they change all that by killing our black tongues. All right, so we're going to look on some more. We want to jump on two scriptures before we go though. Next week we'll look on some more. Ezekiel 13 and 5. You know, where was our black leaders then? You know, is it that we had no black leaders, or is it that they were just powerless? Because in Tulsa there were some black veterans who were there who took up arms. See, what I'm calling the 14th Amendment right, the right to bear arms, whichever amendment if that was our first amendment. The right to bear arms. They did bear arms, but boy, they could not withstand the burning that came. They were prepared for men to come in and shoot. But I think there were stories of planes dropping dynamite on these buildings and setting them on fire. Man, this is something. All right, let me go out with Obadiah 1:13 to 15. Obadiah chapter 1, verse 13. Thou shouldst not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. I mean, we coming out of slavery, trying to find peace. Here you are. Yea, have not looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Many houses were looted. Neither shouldst thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither shouldst thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. For the day of the Lord is near upon all heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Oh my God. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. Hmm. As ye have done, it's going to happen to you. So you look at them Tulsa and all them places, just know that it's gonna happen to you. And it is speaking about all heathen. You know, Obadiah is really talking about Esau's descendants, but here talk about all heathen. The main one is Esau's descendants, Edomites. You are the main one, the most high is after. We think why we can strive to, yeah, I mean, you come at us in all different ways. That's verse 15, verse 16. For ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Mm, you know, if that's not justice, then what is? Most I say the same way they took your possessions, I am going to give their possessions to you. Alright, so that's good enough for today. Time up on us already. Just remember, all these black towns, these blacks, they were Christians. And like I said, so was their white attackers. They were Christians too. So, I mean, what, you think being a Christian today is going to save you from these people? No, sir. You know what will save you? Be in the ISUPK. I wouldn't even tell them be Hebrew Israelite. Be in the ISUPK, the home of the truth, and the commanding General YAHANNA to be. That's what will save you. All these businesses that were built was torn down out, and this is and it's not by schemes and nothing, just outright war and come take away things. That's what it was all about. Yeah. All right. Now we're gonna close out with same song that with the button. Yeah. Give them young brothers them advice, so to speak. Just remember, pay your tithes. Keep paying your tithes. That's how the truth here is spread. Pay your tithes. Join the truth. You see that number that just keep running across. give it a call. They're part of ISUPK Jamaica. Come in class, right? No matter thing that you can stay where you are, and you know you are in the truth. Doesn't work like that. All right, so until next week again. Like, subscribe, share, pay your thanks. Sorry, shalom. Take us out, activate on.
Come in a dark mode. Dark mode. Run from the Lord, come in a dark mode. In a dark mode.
Yeah, you do it.
I can last night them know we not right. Come on, why them want we know the guns up and we get that bad time. When we love the feeling, want me kill them. We can do this all night. Here we do but now we are reasonable to take them 3 points. Screwing on and off, we bust them face and gun. We and gun them up. We have right with M16 and gun. Face one gun. Bust face, any see with face and gun. Waste my gun. Properly kill them.
Come in a dark mode. When we tell them, say me the in a dark mode. Dark mode, dark mode.
And them sit and them get shot, you know. Black sugar kill us. Coulda super, coulda maximus. Who want the exodus? When kind device touch him, shot a burn in the inus. Send a bitch and make shit. Bad shit. More love when the shit was sitting in any slum. Coming from the slum, stupid guns. Slow to bust me guns. Killers on the crop. A drunk car, jump down, bust them head. Properly way now.
They in a dark mode. Dark mode. When we tell them, come in a dark mode. Dark mode. When we tell them I'm in dark mode. Yeah. When we tell some boy come in a dark mode. Dark mode. Dark mode. Who me got talk for they on me mind, them no like it. Come here ready to kill some psychics. We never do some boy, them a go like say them a bad man. So me get to find out say them mad. Them a talk about how me a idiot. Me have to play fool we catch wise. But them know say me smarter than them. Come in a dark mode. Dark mode.